Thank you so much for joining and being willing to share your experience. Specifically, we're talking about raising awareness. So I just wonder if you could say sort of what your journey's been, what's happened to you, and then we can just talk a bit about what you've learned over the years and we can share that with others.
The years of knowledge.
The
Hope.
years.
Wow, yeah, so it's now 20 years since I was first diagnosed. So back in 2006, when I was 23 or 24, lost track of age now. I'm 43 now. So 44, sorry, I keep getting my age wrong even now. 44 just in February. So yeah, it's been a long journey. And it was a long journey getting to the diagnosis stage as well. So I probably had a couple of years of unexplained symptoms in my early 20s before I was even reached the point of diagnosis back in 2006. So yeah, the first symptoms were just of my brain tumor, which was properly diagnosed fully as a pineal germinoma in 2007. But in 2006, it was just identified as a lesion on my pituitary gland area. But the first symptoms I kind of had were chronic thirst, so unending thirst, which was kind of unquenchable. I was drinking liters of water through the day, and as you can imagine, going to the toilet just unendingly, it seemed at the time. And just no explanation for why this suddenly came on. And I was seeing my GP regularly in Birmingham to try and get some kind of explanation, and all different tests were done for normal diabetes and for throat problems, for stomach problems. All different tests were done through my GP, and she did everything she could to try and get to the bottom of it. But I think because I was a young man and I was a young guy at the time, I was doing other, going out a lot, drinking a lot, living a younger lifestyle, and I think there was a bit of slowness in the system in terms of um, doing some of the tests that might have helped me identify the diabetes insipidus, which was actually happening at the time. And if that had been identified in the first kind of couple of years when I was going to my doctors, then things would have been a bit speedier in my treatment. And then finally, by I think about 2006, I started to notice some strange eyesight problems as well. So I was getting double vision. I remember looking up at a windowsill when I woke up in bed and seeing two of a vase that was there and thought, what's going on? And then, yeah, I noticed it everywhere I was going and went to get my eye test just through normal opticians, and they obviously didn't really identify anything because it was such a complicated rare eye condition as it turned out. And that was really where the first identification happened. Really was when I started kind of pushing and fighting for these problems to be resolved. And it was only once my parents actually came back in 2006, they were living in France at the time, and my mum saw that I dropped down from my normal weight to about 9 stone to about 6 stone, that I went into A&E, and they kind of first said, look, this isn't normal. I've had these symptoms for 2 years. Can you see what's going on? And then the system started and kicked in, and I was identified as having diabetes insipidus first. And that was identified. And once that was identified, I was referred to the ophthalmology department to see what was going on with my eyesight. And that was when they also said, yes, something really strange is happening. This is quite a rare condition to have double vision that I had. And also by then kind of patches of blindness as well, I'd noticed. So once that was all done, both departments at Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham referred me to get an MRI done. And that was when a very tiny pea-sized tumour was seen on my pituitary gland, the pineal gland in my brain. And that was in 2006, March, April time. And yeah, it was then seen, and yeah, plan was kind of put in place to between all the different departments at Queen Elizabeth Hospital to care for it. But it was thought to be benign and very small, and because of the area that it was in, it was just decided to monitor it really for a year. And I had amazing endocrinologists and ophthalmologists up there, and eventually a neurosurgeon as well stepped in to have a look at it. But yeah, for a year it was kind of left to be just monitored really, and I kept on having different tests and decisions to be made about what course of action to take because of the risk of where it was near my optic nerve and the pituitary pineal glands. They didn't want to go in and just get it out if they thought it was benign and small and not growing at the time. But then in March 2007, or into 2007, I started to get lots more strange things happening. So my work, I think throughout March, had noticed my behaviour had started seeming a bit odd. I'd seemed very distant, so my character had changed a little bit. People said that I walked past them in corridors a couple of weeks before I had to have my emergency surgery, saying that I wasn't responding to them in the normal way. And my sister then noticed that I was acting differently as well, and my housemates. And they called my sister called my parents again back, and they came back a couple of days between before the 27th of March, 2007, and they saw how different I'd become and a lot iller. And then on the 27th of March, I woke up unable to, just unable to walk normally, talk normally. And as soon as I was lying in bed, I knew something was drastically wrong. And I think the day before we'd known something had changed. And luckily I had a MRI scan actually scheduled in the next day. But I woke up and was just clearly in a really bad state and started vomiting, and it was pretty horrific. And my parents rushed me into hospital, straight into the MRI room, and they were straight away, this is life threatening. Did the scan and was straight into surgery. And I still remember the day, just lying in the bed, not being able to know much about what was going on really, but I still remember seeing my parents' faces as they were looking down on me, and the doctor saying there's a 50-50 chance of you not surviving this. I got hydrocephalus, so my brain was blocked from the from the tumor, which had turned out to have grown and blocked that area of my brain. So they had to go in emergency and remove it straight away. And luckily, very fortunately, I went into the surgery and came out the other side. And from there on, it was just, they discovered it was cancer and it had spread to my spine. But very fortunately, they were able to get it all out in the surgery. So 95% of it was removed. And then they just had to make sure that they got the rest of it with radiotherapy. And that was 6 months on from there, throughout 2007 to 2008, 2009, still going through treatment. But I was back at work in 2008, part-time, gradually returning to work. But the treatment was pretty intense throughout 2007, and I didn't really do a lot other than luckily have my parents back to look after me in my mid-20s, which is a huge life-changing thing, to suddenly go from being independent and having all your plans ahead of you and your life kind of mapped out and also feeling in a way in your mid-20s that you're invincible and that you've got everything ahead of you, to suddenly being back looked after by your parents, and it changes their life as well, and everything that they've got planned. So at the time, they'd luckily just retired, and I was fortunate to have them there to look after me for a year and care for me, because at times, I wasn't able to do much during the radiotherapy on the area of my brain that affected. And then coming out of it, I was left with lots of symptoms, which then took years to get used to, and for family and friends to get used to as well, and changing work patterns. I'd been previously trained as an actor, so quite a physical, sometimes anxiety-causing job, and I was left with a condition. I'm left partially sighted. Not that you can't tell much from my eyes, but my optic nerve was crushed by the tumour, and then also in the operation was slightly affected, and my left eye is mostly low vision, and then my right eye is centrally low vision, and then the rest of my eyesight is double, which was the first thing I had to get used to, was moving around. I remember the first day I went back out by myself on a train, and Dad walked me to the station to make sure I was okay. And I nearly knocked someone over getting on the train, and suddenly realised, okay, I need to go and speak to somebody about how I cope moving around. And I was lucky to be helped by Focus, a charity in Birmingham that helps people who are partially sighted, and they provided me with a white warning cane, and I got used to managing that. And then then I, at the time, was just having support really through my endocrinologist to manage the hormonal symptoms I was left with. So I didn't really know that I had something called adrenal insufficiency as a secondary condition for a long time. And after I was treated, I was given the medication, the steroids, and put onto hydrocortisone, and also levothyroxine for having no working thyroid, which was knocked out during my treatment. And also them.Prepare for the diabetes insipidus, and lansoprazole to protect my stomach. But I didn't know about adrenal insufficiency really so much, or how to manage it, till a long time after I started recovering, really. And I think that was when I was first living in London and referred to Guy's and St Thomas Hospital, and then was really told fully about all the impact that adrenal insufficiency can have, which is the biggest symptom that's been left from my brain tumour to manage, that affects my life. And it's a huge condition to manage, along with hypothyroidism, because it affects your adrenaline. So I don't have any adrenaline. So response to stress is hugely affected, and obviously you have stress in normal day-to-day life all the time. Just even small things you have to be aware of that can affect your stress and make adrenal insufficiency worse. So you have to be careful to manage that. The energy-wise as well, fatigue, huge ups and downs of fatigue is really difficult to manage. And those have been the two biggest symptoms to manage in the 20 years since diagnosis. And I'm a lot more clued up on how to manage them now in the last 10 years since knowing about the condition, and the support of Addison's disease UK as well, and the information that they share about managing it and the condition, advocating for yourself and the awareness, and also through your hospital, Vicky, and the nurses there who've shown me, the sick day rules and how to do the injection, and all the sorts of different things you have to manage, diet, and then I think one of the biggest support systems that I only discovered in 2017 when I started working with them was Shine Cancer Support, which supports young adults with cancer, who've got cancer, who've had cancer, or after cancer, going through treatment at any stage, and just the awareness that they raise for you as an individual, and how having a cancer diagnosis changes your life in your 20s, 30s, or 40s, especially when, you know, depending on the diagnosis that you get, if you get a life-limiting diagnosis, it's a huge thing that changes your life at an early age to suddenly cope with. But I was fortunate, very fortunate. I've seen people who weren't as lucky as myself, unfortunate as myself, in the departments I've gone through, who have had to cope with life-limiting conditions. But even in the case when you're living on past it, the amount of impact it has and changes that it has on your life, you have to learn to cope with that and not almost compete on the same level as people at the same age as you, who are healthy and haven't been through the same conditions, and not compare yourself a lot of the time to your stage in life, because I had essentially 5-6 years out of my life in my mid-20s, when other people were starting their careers and starting families, and I was just trying to get my life back on track, and really fortunate at the time to have the support of family and my hospitals to do that. But I didn't have any kind of support in terms of managing some of the emotional impacts it has. You're talking 20 years ago now. For me, it's changed a lot now, the support that's out there from like the brain cancer charities and Shines there and other charities to help people, but and also through hospitals with programs like yourself, Vicky. I don't think really were there so much to help with the pathways in life to cope with it afterwards. And I think that was what I found so helpful from discovering Shine. And later on was I'd just pushed on in my 20s, 30s, pushed on, thought I was the same as everyone else. And in my late 30s, it hit a kind of barrier where I realized, actually, I've been ignoring all of these symptoms and pushing on to high pressure jobs. So I was living in London, working a really high pressure job, and I had to move on from another couple of jobs. And I realized, actually, I need to be more aware of what I need and put my health central to be able to cope as I'm now getting older and living with these conditions that some of them do get worse as you age as well. So that's been a big adjustment to make, but also just the amazing things that you can do after a diagnosis. And once you're living on with if you're still even living on with a cancer that you're coping with. I've got many friends who are still living with their cancers and able to do so many amazing things and raise awareness and support others, and also have amazing family lives and careers themselves. And that's what's just so inspiring for me as well. When I'm struggling with my own conditions, that I think how fortunate I am to have had it treated, but also then just all of us together kind of seeing that we can carry on past it and do amazing things. I mean, I wouldn't even have thought when I was healthy, before I'd had the cancer, some of the jobs I've had and things I've done since in London. I was with a digital consulting agency working with some of the biggest London media agencies, and then with a film company filming theatre, and with some of the biggest theatre and arts companies in the UK. So I'm so proud to have done that and be able to still do the things that I love, and it not to have impacted in my life as huge as it might have done. And that's the biggest thing that I think is important for people to know when they get a diagnosis, is that it's not, straight away something that's going to stop you living and doing things, outside of the treatment. You can still live a fulfilling life and be surrounded by love and family and achievements. And that's the biggest thing I've learned from it. It's the support of my family and friends, and have enabled me to do that when I didn't have those other organizations around me to help. So that's where I am now, is all that realization, but also that it changes all the time. So the reason I was in touch with you recently was that that things had got quite difficult in my mid-40s, as it does for everyone in normal life anyway, I think. But I'm also, when you're coping with the symptoms and other pressures in life, it can get more difficult to manage, and especially with adrenal insufficiency. And then also, things, even now I've had recent tests that have suggested I need to go on new replacement hormones. So going on to hopefully, well, definitely testosterone now, to help with some of the energy levels and quality of life that I've definitely noticed got more difficult over the last few years. And I think that will help with energy and the fights as well against the symptoms. So things change, and that's when reaching out to the services of the NHS, like the life after cancer services that are available, is so important. And always also advocating for yourself. And when you know that something's changed, speaking to your medical team about it is so important. Just to say, I'm more tired than I was, I'm getting more anxious than I was, I'm not coping with life as easily as I was, I'm in more pain, or any body changes that happen. It's being aware that your body isn't the same as others, because you may have lots of chronic illnesses that have been caused, or changes in your body that have been caused past treatment and diagnosis. So just getting the help has been the biggest thing that I've and that sometimes requires swallowing your pride as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's important to do, isn't it? And I wonder, you mentioned changing jobs since having been diagnosed. How do you approach going into a new employer? How do you approach saying to them, this is my medical background, or these are my needs in a workplace, for example, from the adrenal side? What would you recommend that others have, for others to do from your experience?
Being upfront and just being honest about it, and not being afraid to share what you need, and putting yourself center to make your workplace the most comfortable that it can be, to enable you to work. And the systems in places in all employers to make that possible. And I was lucky to have, at all stages, when I first recovered, the bone marrow theatre that I was working for were really supportive in my role, and making sure that you get help from Access to Work as well, that's out there. So they can provide you with the technology you need if you've got problems with eyesight, or with pain, sitting at your desk properly, seat, foot. They provided me with a footstool, and with a raised board to look at papers on. And they can really help you get the equipment that you need, and also to think about what you need to talk to your employer about. And also, just if you've got conditions that affect energy and your cognitive ability through the day, just talking to your employer about about your working pattern is really important. What, managing, there's something that I found out about, for a couple of years ago, called spoon theory. So managing your energy in terms of spoons of energy through the day, thinking of it in terms of how many spoons of energy does it take me to get up in the morning, get dressed, get ready for work, do my job, then come back, look after a family, and do everything you need to through the day. And that's been really helpful. And just thinking about that in terms of your working week, that's become something later on in life that was really important for me, as I was able to have a rest day in the middle of the week. When I was first of all, because I was working with two different employers, Shine and the Lighthouse Theatre I'm now at, they agreed to have this working a rest day in the middle of the week, and that was then made possible. Now I've gone full time with Lighthouse as well, to have that day off in the week where I don't work full, I don't work full hours. I work 30 hours through the week, so that helps me cope with the energy and the full tasks that I have to do in my job. Yeah, so just having those conversations openly, your bosses will listen and make adaptations that they need.
I think that's such good advice, because if we don't ask, you don't know, do you? But actually, I
Yeah.
think that in terms of understanding what you need, it's just really important to share that, isn't it, in a really straightforward way, and
Mm,
to ask for it, because there is something in that if your workplace won't provide that support for you after everything you've been through, is that the right workplace for you? So it's
exactly.
important to
Yes.
ask for it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, it just gives you more confidence in your ability to do your job, to know that that support's there, and that when you're not well or when you need extra support, that they understand and that you can reach out to them. I mean, my employers just asked me to write out a care plan for them, so that they know exactly step by step what they need to do when I'm not well. And with adrenal insufficiency, that requires sometimes taking time out. There's various ways you can manage it. So just taking some time out of the office to get some fresh air, breathe, calm down. That's a regular thing you have to do. And mindfulness has helped loads. So I've always used the Headspace app, which I talk about. Yeah, I recommend to loads of people who go through similar things. And then also just getting out in nature, fresh air every day before work, exercising, getting to the gym before work. So my work adjusted my starting time as well to 10 in the morning to allow me to get to the gym, because that helps me get other hormones going that can help with the missing adrenaline. And having really set routines that help you get into gear and help you through the day. Um, so those kind of conversations are vital to get to let them know, what you need to work to your fullest.
Yeah, no, I think that's all such good advice. And I know that people will find it, perhaps who are at an earlier stage of their diagnosis or their journey, will find it really helpful to see that you've gone and got back on with life. And like you say, it probably does look very different than it would have done had this never have happened.
Mm,
But maybe you've taken opportunities that you wouldn't have done otherwise too, and met people along the way, through your experience that you wouldn't have come into contact with otherwise. But thank you so much for sharing all of that information, because I know that there will be people out there who will really benefit from your experience and what you've learned all over the 20 years as well. So thank you for sharing.
thanks so much. Yeah, and so send all the best and warmest to everybody who's going through it. It's such a hard thing. But yeah, it's just by talking to each other, sharing, and having people who understand what you're going through, and also people like Vicky and the support that's out there who understand what we need to get through day to day is so important. So yeah, thank you, Vicky, for making it possible
Well, thank
and
you.
helping me.
It's an absolute pleasure.